Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. In the far reaches of the galaxy, on the very edge of human exploration, a star erupted in a violent burst of light and energy. The explosion was more than just a spectacular end to a celestial body, it was the beginning of a nightmare. The light that came from that dying star wasn't just a flash, it was a beam, sharp and precise, stretching out across the cosmos like a weapon aimed at the planet Eos, the lone colony in that forgotten corner of the galaxy. The colonists of Eos had seen distant stars die before, but never like this. Telescopes and sensors lit up with warnings, but no one understood the true nature of what was coming. When the light hit Eos, it didn't cause explosions or fires. No, it was much more insidious than that. The beam seemed to seep into everything, penetrating the atmosphere, crawling into the soil, sinking into the bones of every living thing on the planet. At first, nothing happened. Life continued as normal, though a sense of unease lingered in the air. It wasn't long before that sense of unease turned into terror. The first to notice something wrong were the researchers stationed in the wilds, those who studied the native creatures of Eos. Animals that had once been docile, barely a threat to the settlers, began to change. They grew larger, their eyes wild with aggression, their bodies twisting into grotesque new forms. The researchers sent out frantic messages back to the colony, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. All that remained of the research station were shattered buildings and bloodstains. In the colony itself, the effects of the beam were more subtle at first. The people began to feel a broken bar different. Fear, the natural survival instinct, began to fade. At first, they welcomed Ida, who wouldn't want to live without fear. But soon, the absence of fear turned into something much darker. With no fear, there was no hesitation, no second thoughts. Anger came easily, and with it, violence. The colonists, who had once worked together to build a future on this distant world, began to turn on each other. Elias Rook watched it all happen from a distance. He was a pilot, a man who spent more time in the sky than on the ground, ferrying supplies and colonists between the scattered outposts of Eos. Elias had always been a loner, someone who preferred the quiet solitude of his cockpit to the noise and chaos of colony life. So when the fighting started, when people began to lose their grip on sanity, he stayed in the air, watching from above. But even Elias couldn't ignore what was happening for long. The colony's leadership, what was left of it, put out desperate calls for help. They needed someone to find out what had caused this madness, someone to find a solution before the entire planet descended into chaos. Elias wasn't a hero, but he knew he couldn't just sit by and watch it all burn. So, reluctantly, he brought his ship, the Omen, down to the surface and began his search for answers. As he wandered through the colony, now little more than a battleground, Elias saw the full extent of the damage. Buildings lay in ruins, fires burned uncontrolled, and bodies littered the streets. The survivors weren't much better off. Those who hadn't been killed were either hiding in fear or had given into the madness, roaming the streets in packs, attacking anyone who crossed their path. Elias knew he needed to act fast. The light of the eye of the stars, as some had begun to call Ida, was still affecting them. He could feel it too, that strange calm in his mind where fear should be. It was like a numbness, an absence of something that should be there, a feeling he couldn't shake. But Elias was no stranger to fear, and he knew the dangers of a mind without it. Fear kept you alive, kept you thinking. Without it, all that was left was impulse. And impulse, unchecked, was deadly. He made his way to the central command center, hoping to find some information, some clue as to what had happened. The command center was barely operational, its systems flickering as if even the machines were affected by the strange light. The few officers who remained were a shell of their former selves, their eyes hollow, their movements mechanical. Elias didn't waste time with them. He dug into the systems himself, scanning through reports, data logs, anything that might give him a lead. That's when he found it. Buried deep in the files was a transmission, fragmented and garbled, but still clear enough to understand. It was a message from a nearby outpost, sent just before the light had hit us. The message spoke of an alien structure, ancient and vast, hidden beneath the surface of the planet. The researchers there had activated something they didn't understand. And then the light came. Elias knew what he had to do. The answers were beneath the surface, in that alien structure. Whatever the researchers had found, whatever they had unleashed, it was the key to everything. He just hoped he wasn't too late. He took the Omen back into the sky, heading toward the coordinates of the outpost. The journey was perilous. The mutated creatures that now roamed the planet weren't confined to the ground. Flying beasts, massive and terrifying, had begun to appear, their forms twisted and alien. Elias had to use every bit of his skill to navigate the skies, dodging their attacks as he raced toward his destination. When he finally arrived at the outpost, he found it in ruins. The alien structure, however, was still intact. It loomed over the wreckage, a massive monolith of dark stone, its surface covered in strange, glowing symbols. Elias felt a chill run down his spine as he approached it. This was the source. This was where it had all begun. The entrance to the structure was open, as if waiting for him. Elias stepped inside, his footsteps echoing through the vast, empty halls. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the walls seemed to pulse with an unseen energy. The deeper he went, the stronger the feeling became, until it was almost suffocating. Finally, he reached the heart of the structure. In the center of the room was a massive device, unlike anything Elias had ever seen. It was ancient, clearly alien, its design incomprehensible to human eyes. But one thing was clear. This was the source of the Eye of the Stars. This was what had caused the madness on Yas. Elias approached the device cautiously, unsure of what to do next. He wasn't a scientist or an engineer. He was just a pilot, and this was far beyond anything he had ever dealt with. But he knew he had to stop it. The people of Yas were counting on him, even if they didn't know it. As he studied the device, he noticed something strange. The glowing symbols on its surface weren't random. They were shifting, changing, as if responding to his presence. And then, without warning, a voice filled the room. "You have come." Elias froze. The voice was deep, resonant, and unmistakably alien. It spoke directly into his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "You have been chosen to face the trial of the stars." Elias's heart raced. The trial of the stars? What did that mean? "Your species has been found wanting." The voice continued, emotionless and cold. It spoke of an ancient civilization, one that had long since disappeared but had left behind its legacy in the form of this trial. The Eye of the Stars was a test, designed to judge the worthiness of a species. Those who could resist the madness, who could retain their humanity in the face of fearlessness, would be deemed worthy. Those who failed a broken bar would be destroyed. Elias's mind raced as he processed the information. This wasn't just an accident. The Eye of the Stars was deliberate, a tool of judgment. And humanity had failed. The voice spoke again, softer this time, almost as if it were contemplating. "But you are different. You have resisted the pull of the eye. You have retained your mind. Perhaps your broken bar there is hope." Elias felt a surge of determination. He wasn't about to let some long-dead alien race decide the fate of humanity. If there was a chance to stop this, to save what was left of Yas, he had to take it. He moved toward the device, his mind focused on one thing, shutting it down. But as he reached for it, the symbols on the surface flared to life, and the room was filled with blinding light. Elias squinted against the sudden brightness, his instincts telling him to retreat, but something in the alien structure held him in place. The light wasn't painful, it enveloped him, seeping into his mind, filling his thoughts with images and sensations beyond anything he'd ever experienced. He could see the stars, not as distant points of light but as vast, living entities, each with a purpose, each connected to something far greater than himself. It was as if the universe itself had opened up before him, and for a fleeting moment, He felt a strange sense of peace. But just as quickly as it came, the peace was shattered. The light dimmed, and Elias found himself standing in the heart of the alien structure once again, the device humming softly in the background. His mind was clear now, focused. The voice that had spoken to him was gone, but its message remained. He had to stop the eye, or what was left of humanity on Eos would be lost. Elias examined the device with newfound purpose. He could see now that the symbols on its surface weren't just random markings, they were part of a complex interface, one designed to interact directly with the mind. He wasn't an expert in alien technology, but he had no other choice. Taking a deep breath, he placed his hand on the device and let his thoughts flow into it. The response was immediate. The symbols flared to life once more, shifting and rearranging themselves into a pattern Elias could almost understand. It was as if the device was communicating with him, not in words, but in pure thought. Images of the star that had exploded, of the beam of light that had struck Eos, and of the countless other worlds that had faced the same trial flashed through his mind. He saw species rise and fall, civilizations crumble under the weight of their own fearlessness, all because they couldn't pass the test. But there was something else, a faint glimmer of hope, buried deep within the patterns of light and energy. The trial could be stopped, the damage reversed, but only if Elias could figure out how to control the device. His mind raced as he sifted through the images, searching for a solution. The device was designed to test a species' ability to resist the pull of the eye, to retain their humanity in the face of overwhelming fearlessness. Elias had done that. He hadn't succumbed to the madness like the others. He had fought it, held on to his mind, his purpose. Maybe that was the key. He focused his thoughts on that idea, willing the device to respond. The symbols on its surface pulsed in time with his thoughts, and slowly, the room around him began to change. The walls shifted, revealing a control panel hidden beneath layers of alien technology. It was ancient, but it was still operational, still capable of turning off the eye. Elias's heart pounded in his chest as he approached the panel. This was it. The fate of Eos rested in his hands. He reached out, his fingers hovering over the controls, when a sudden jolt of fear shot through him. He hesitated. What if he was wrong? What if turning off the device only made things worse? The voice had said that the trial was a test of worthiness. If he stopped it now, would humanity still be judged? Would they be deemed unworthy and destroyed? His mind raced, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. But then he thought of the colony, of the people who were still alive, still fighting to survive. He couldn't let them suffer any longer. He couldn't let the eye of the stars take everything from them. With a steady hand, Elias activated the panel. The symbols on the device flared one last time, then began to fade, their light dimming until they were nothing more than faint etchings on the surface. The hum of energy that had filled the room since his arrival faded into silence. It was over. Elias stood there for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest, waiting for something to happen. But there was only silence. The device was off. The trial had ended. He turned and made his way back to the Omen, his steps slow and deliberate. Outside, the sky was calm. The creatures that had mutated in the wake of the eye's light were still there, but they were different now, less aggressive, less dangerous. The colonists, too, were starting to come back to themselves. The violence that had gripped them was fading, replaced by confusion and exhaustion. Elias climbed into his ship and took off, the familiar hum of the engines a welcome sound after the chaos of the past few days. He flew over the colony, watching as the people began to emerge from their hiding places, unsure of what had happened but grateful that the madness had stopped. As he soared through the sky, Elias couldn't help but think about the trial. The eye of the stars had judged humanity, but had they passed? He had stopped the device, saved the colony, but what did that mean for the future? The voice had said that the trial was a test of worthiness, a test to see if a species could retain their humanity in the face of fearlessness. Elias had held on to his, but what about the others? The weight of that question lingered with him as he left Eos behind, heading back toward the outer rim of the galaxy. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: humanity had been tested, and they had survived. Whether or not they had passed the trial was a question for another time. For now, Elias was content to fly, the stars stretching out before him like a promise of something more, something better. The eye of the stars might have been closed, but the universe was still vast, still full of mysteries to uncover. And Elias Rook would be there to face them, whatever they might be.